As you may know, we are currently in the fight of our lives for the preservation of the American Republic. There are battles raging in almost every part of this country. One area where the fighting seems to be ever so fierce is within the three branches of our government. The major political parties are constantly celebrating major wins and taking major losses. However, it seems as if one party is determined to win whilst the other is hell-bent on losing. Yesterday, squad member and elite Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez filed articles of impeachment against two Supreme Court justices, Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. This is from the New York Times. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat of New York, introduced articles of impeachment on Wednesday against Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel A. Alito Jr., accusing them of improperly failing to disclose gifts from wealthy benefactors and to rescue themselves from certain cases before the Supreme Court. There is no realistic chance of impeachment advancing in the Republican-controlled House, but some Democrats say that their party must make a case against the justices in the court of public opinion, especially since the Supreme Court ruled this month that presidents have substantial immunity from prosecution, upending criminal cases against former President Donald J. Trump. This is a video of Ms. Cortez on the House floor explaining her decision to file these articles of impeachment.
Reasonable Americans will and do believe that Justices Thomas and Alito are prone and subject to corruption, that the institution failing to punish them is broken, and that consequently their impeachment is a constitutional imperative and our congressional duty. The abuses of power committed by Justice Thomas and Justice Alito are precisely the types of corruption that the framers understood was an existential threat to our democracy. Instances like these and misconduct like that of Alito's and Thomas's are precisely why the framers gave us the tool of impeachment.
This is so rich coming from a Democrat. Considering Hillary Clinton, considering possibly, most likely, Barack Obama, considering Joe Biden, and the overwhelming evidence of corruption that he has taken part of throughout his time in the government, it's always so rich that Democrats magically care about corruption when it is supposed to have happened on the Republican side of the aisle. But anyway, some people may not count this as a victory, considering the fact that, like it said in a New York Times article, this is not going to go anywhere. There's no way this is going to pass the House. And even if by some magic it did, it would probably die in the Senate because, yes, Democrats might have no problem indicting and prosecuting and convicting Trump. But going after the Supreme Court, I think that's a line that even they may hesitate to cross. Nevertheless, this is a problem because at the end of the day, the Democrats want to completely discredit this court because of its conservative majority. On top of that, the reason why the court currently has this conservative majority is because of Donald Trump. And of course, we must undo every single thing that Donald Trump did. And if we can't undo it, then we must discredit its validity. The Supreme Court is the only branch of government that they do not have complete and utter power over. The Republicans may have the House, and we're going to talk about this a little later, but they don't use their power. Even when they had the House and the Senate, they did nothing with it, okay? And on top of that, the Democrats also have the administrative state, and they have the other branch of government, which is the mainstream media. They have all this power to toss around and do whatever they want with, But it stops at the Supreme Court, and they don't like it. And if they can't pack the court, if they can't completely just get rid of the justices, the only option they have is to discredit the court, and that is what they are going to do. In addition to that, they want this to become a partisan issue for voters because they cannot keep the conversation around Joe Biden and the crappy job that he's doing, that he has done in office. On top of that, the fact that, his mind isn't really there. They don't want that conversation to be happening amongst voters. So they're going to use the Supreme Court as another way to get people to the polls to vote for Democrats. And lastly, intimidation. Like it was mentioned in a New York Times article, the Supreme Court has come down on a lot of rulings that do not align with the Democrats' agenda and what they want to see happen on a federal level. So therefore, they are trying to intimidate these justices to vote more in their favor moving forward. Now, you might be tempted to look past this because you're probably thinking, LaShawn, at least we have Republicans. They have the House. We may not have the Senate or the executive branch, but we have some type of power, right? And there's so much going on. And if Alexandria is willing to, impeach the Supreme Court, then the Republicans have to be doing something to get back at the Democrats. This is from The Hill. Representative Anna Paulina Luna moved to force a vote on Wednesday on her resolution to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in inherent contempt of Congress and fine him $10,000 for each day that he declines to turn over audio from President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur over his handling of classified documents. House leaders who had 2 legislative days to act on the matter held an immediate vote on tabling the measure, which failed 207 to 209. And then one on sending the resolution to the Rules Committee, which also failed 207 to 211. 4 Republicans joined with all Democrats in voting to table and refer the resolution. Reps John Durtay, Dave Joyce, Tomic McClintock, and Mike Turner. When I heard this story, I was so pissed. Let me just add some additional context to this so you can understand how completely absurd this is. The situation with Merrick Garland stems from, like this article mentioned, Joe Biden's handling of classified documents. The audio that the House is asking him to turn over is the audio with the interview that he had with Robert Hur, where Hur's conclusion was that Joe Biden was basically too incompetent to stand trial. Our president, right? It was determined that he was too old and fickle and confused and had too many memory problems to stand trial. They gave over the written transcript of that conversation to the House, but the House is now requesting the audio version. And of course, Robert Hur does not want the House to get the audio version because it is just going to reaffirm why Joe Biden should not even be sitting in that White House. So the fact that he is refusing to send this over, he should be held in contempt because who are you to say, no, I don't want to give this over? So Representative Anna Paulina put this vote forward, and then 4 slimely worthless Republicans sided with the Democrats in order to protect Joe Biden. This is exactly why I decided to title this video, Why Republicans Suck, because they do. A lot of them in Congress, all they do is keep seats warm. I don't understand. If I was one of these people's constituents, I would be going off right now, because why did I send you to Congress to represent me if you're not going to represent me? Before the voting took place, House Speaker Mike Johnson was asked about the issue in a press conference, and this is what he had to say.
But as a constitutional law litigator, a former constitutional law litigator, my preference is to follow the legal process and legal proceedings that protect the institution. I'm frankly have a little pause about presenting an Article I authority question to the Article III branch, to the federal judiciary, to ask the judicial branch whether they believe we have the right to enforce a subpoena in this unconventional way. I'd rather do it in the way that we've done in our present litigation, but we'll let the chips fall where they may. Every member has a right to bring a privilege motion like that, and Anna's very committed to the principle, and I am too. We all are. I think every Republican is.
Mind you, this is the guy that replaced Kevin McCarthy because McCarthy was accused of being too soft and not aggressive enough. So basically, we got Kevin McCarthy Jr. here talking about how he doesn't want to, not follow procedures. The Democrats indicted and convicted a former president. One of them just yesterday decided to file articles of impeachment against the Supreme Court. You think they're concerned with the procedures and rules and the norm? The fact of the matter is, Democrats are playing chess and Republicans are not playing at all. And it is frustrating when you consider the emergency situation that we are in. These folks are trying to destroy our institution, but then Mike Johnson has the audacity to talk about, I don't want to do things to go against the laws of the institution. If you don't get with the program, we might not have any institutions, Mr. Johnson. Wake up. This story didn't get much attention, and I know I'm going all over the place here, but just bear with me. This story, right, about a guy by the name of Matthew Calango, right, or Calango, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but he held a senior position in Joe Biden's Department of Justice, and he humbly demoted himself to serve alongside Alvin Bragg in Trump's hush money case. Y'all are over here talking about the norm and procedures and decency. These folks don't give a rat's behind about any of that. The fact that they had someone that held a high position in the Department of Justice, that's a federal position, step down all the way to New York City's Attorney General's office just so that they can make sure that their guy was in the room when Trump was being prosecuted. And y'all are sitting there again concerned about procedure and decency? Honestly speaking, these milquetoast Republicans, they are no different than the elite Democrats, because at the end of the day, the more this country and its institutions gets destroyed, they are not the ones that are suffering, right? It is their constituents, it's the voters, it's the general American public that has to deal with watching their country get destroyed. These Republicans get to sit there on Capitol Hill and waste our votes and waste our time and waste our money to do absolutely positively nothing for their voters. It is so frustrating. As a Republican voter, to hear something like this, you guys had a valid reason to hold this guy in contempt of the court. Completely valid. And 4 of you feckless, worthless pieces of decided to side with Democrats. To end this video and my rant, this story and stories like these remind me that it is imperative for me to put my trust in God and not in man. Because at the end of the day, this country was built on Christian Judeo values. And even though it might not look like it, I do feel like God is definitely still in control of our government. And I have to trust that. Because if I don't, I'm going to drive myself crazy. Because at the end of the day, men will fail you, but God won't.